everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is episode 1 of the fall semester of our first year. This podcast is meant to be a peer-to-peer discussion about how you as students really help your other peers navigate what it takes to get from your first year of college to graduation. Because recognize that takes a lot of work and it doesn't look the same for everybody here, depending on identities that we hold, barriers that we might have, or even what our certain joys are in our work here. Getting from day 1 to day end can be different. So we really appreciate the conversations we've had during our first year. Today we wanted to talk about what it means and what resources that you have found to be a first generation student here. Just to put some terms out there, first generation student is terms that are used for you or the first in your family to go to college. We use it as a term, but that's kind of its go-to meaning, but it can also mean you are in college, but you are by yourself. Maybe your family doesn't speak to you, you've lost contact, anything like that. Either way, first generation often means you are the first in your family and you're navigating this by yourself. Or at least with experiences, you were the first to go through it. So what we want to talk a bit about today, we have 2 wonderful students here with us. And I think to use the first question as intros, I'd love you both to tell us a bit about your story. What has your story been like and what led you to where you're at today?
Oh, great. So for starters, my name is Elizabeth Rojas Vasquez, and I am a first generation Mexican American Latina woman in college right now. I am currently an English major with a minor in literature. And a little bit about my story. So I'm originally from Las Vegas, so I am a long way from home. And the transition from being in high school to being in college was a very difficult one for me, just because navigating the college application process was so difficult for me. I didn't have that person to look up to for guidance. I didn't have anybody really to go to besides my school counselors. And even then, all the personal questions that I had about college, what college was going to be like for me, what how do I as a person, or how do I as myself really choose where to go, how am I going to navigate it. I had nobody really there for me. It was a very, very lonely experience, trying to figure out what college to go to. How do I figure out financial stuff? I know one of the biggest issues that I had being a first generation student was that my parents are undocumented. And so the FAFSA was such, how would I put this? It was something so difficult for me to just tackle by myself. And you also get that, I also saw that fear in my parents that, their information was going to be kind of put out there, and it wasn't safe to do it. And so they kind of also, not in a way held me back from submitting college applications, but in a way they also encouraged me to, pursue a higher education, because even though it's a really harsh reality to face, that was the only way that I could make it as a woman in America, to have this higher education, to hold this degree, because that was the only way that I could have financial stability in my future, and maybe be able to grant financial stability to my parents as well. They came to this country to build a home, to build a life out of nothing. And so it kind of fell onto me to allow their story to be told through myself, both as a person, as a student, and as a woman in America.
I'm just tearing up because I relate so much. Yeah. Parents are also undocumented. Mm-hmm. I was born in Honduras. I came here when I was 4 years old, and tackling that whole process was so it was like a struggle between your passion
Mhm.
and your mind
Definitely.
of the weight of, my parents are doing all of these things, or my family's doing all of these things, whoever was that person for you, but you were really left out in the cold when it came to FAFSA, when it came to
Yes.
submitting applications.
Mhm.
You really didn't get any guidance about it. And for me, growing up in South Carolina, who has absolutely no funds or any allocation
Mhm.
for first gen or undocumented students, I remember sitting in my school's awards assembly for the seniors, and I sang the song that day, and they were just handing out awards and scholarships left and right, and I got some too myself and everything, and I was just so excited. I was like, wow, I'm a part of this. I'm actually doing this. Like my parents are in the crowd. And then the next day when I go into my guidance counselor's office, the tone was, oh, you don't have access to any of these. So going through that and seeing like, no, but I work just as hard as the next person. But it's like, no, you don't have, this isn't for you. So the process coming out of it and then actually getting to go to college was a big faith builder, like a huge faith builder. But yeah, that was a little. I'm a marketing major, talent management minor. I just became the president of the National Society of Leadership here, which I'm starting next semester. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, I relate.
Thank you both for those. And what I really appreciated about both of you is this duality of you've experienced a lot, and to get to where you are now was not easy. It wasn't easy for you. It wasn't easy for your family. And you named what a lot of these struggles were, and you named a lot of things you're really proud of. You named some things that bring you a lot of joy. And I think for a lot of our students who are first generation, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think it often feels like I'm either, if all of this is thrown at me, how can I possibly feel joy? And if I'm feeling joy, does that negate this?
Exactly.
But really, you've named this experience of you've held both, and I really appreciate what you shared. I wanted to ask you about, for students, we hear students who first generation resonates with them maybe their whole lives. Like they knew college was the path that they wanted to take, and they thought about this throughout junior high, high school, anything like that. And we have students who really start to come into this first generation identity later on. It doesn't really resonate right away, but when they really look back and reflect on it, they're like, you know what, this is something that this term I hold near and dear. I'm wondering, when you started thinking about identifying as a first generation student, what was that like, and when was that?
I think high school really hit it for me. I think starting when everybody started to have the conversation of college, people start kind of going on the tours, and every week it's like, I toured this place, I did this, and that was like the first moment of, oh, and it was so weird for me because my parents were both they both attended higher education in their country. So in Honduras, they had graduated. My mom's a queen. Shout out to Sandra. But when they come here, there's that title completely goes away. It's back down to zero. So seeing my mom through that in high school was also a big factor, because I was watching her work for people that had little to nothing of experience compared to her. Like, she was smarter than them, she was all these things, and just because of a document, just because of a single paper that signed off and said, this isn't for you, that was also a factor for me in high school.
I think so. Personally, in my experience at least, I started identifying as a first generation student long before I knew it.
Mhm.
just because you know, my parents being undocumented, coming to this country and building everything from scratch, my expectations were always to be at the top of my school, to be better at anything than anybody in my class. And I felt very, you know, growing up, I felt like I had to do more than others to keep at the same pace. So it wasn't doing more than others to be more than others. It was always constantly having to do more than I was asked to meet the same basic bare requirements. And I didn't really put a face to a name until I found out the term first generation student and what it meant. And I was like, oh, maybe that's me. And the maybe turned into that's me when I throughout the whole application process during high school, you know, I had nobody to lean on. I had nobody to ask for guidance. It was very, very lonely. And I never really knew it until I asked my parents. I was just like, so what's college like? And they're both undocumented. They don't have any higher education. They didn't even finish middle school. I mean, their only real education was my dad managed to graduate elementary school, and my mother didn't get past the third grade. So, you know, seeing how much effort and how much work that they just put into me, and of course my siblings and my other, you know, family members, my sisters and my brothers, just seeing how much work they put in to allowing me as a first generation student to become and to grow into this person, into this educated woman. I have so much to thank them for.
Yeah.
And I don't think I will ever be able to repay them for that. And you know, it's amazing how much I've accomplished with them backing me up, even if they're not college educated, even if they don't have this document, this title, you know.
Amen to that. I feel a lot about with, you know, the power of the people in your lives, whether it be family, chosen family, just people who care about you succeeding. I think in real, gosh, it can be
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmingly powerful. And I'm thinking it resonates. I'm thinking of moments in my life I've had that feeling. It brought me to tears. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask, and I think you both talked about this, but about what does this identity mean to you right now? I think it can be a lot that comes up, I think, and all of which obviously is valid, but after we talk with students, we hear folks say, like, this is a point of pride. Sometimes this is a point of anger. This is a point of joy, everything. I'm wondering, just as we've been speaking, is what does this mean to you come up?
I guess being a first generation student for me would be being a trailblazer, you know, setting these new standards, and not just setting new standards, but like breaking the old standards, breaking the stereotypes that you know, were placed upon me before I even had the idea or had an idea to grasp it. I think it means a lot, just because growing up I didn't have this representation, and now in everything that I do, I try to represent my people as much as possible. I try to represent these communities that have received no representation, you know, no spotlight, no mic, and I just try to. So right now, also a shameless little plug. I am the student representative to the Board of Trustees for this year's Student Government Association. And, you know, going through that process as well was very, I mean, it was nerve-wracking, it was terrifying, you know, having such a big say in the endeavors of the student body is something that I'm very proud of right now, just because I want to be there for those students that feel like they're not heard, or and not even just students. It surpasses students and just surpasses, I guess, students into persons, into people. I want to represent these people that maybe feel like they don't have a voice, maybe feel like they don't have this platform that they can share, not even their ideas, just their thoughts and their existence. So I don't know, being a first generation student is so meaningful to me. I think that it's an identity that I hold dear.
Absolutely. I think it's something that does trailblaze. And when you think of, who you're representing, you really have, even if you don't know it fully, there's a lot of parts of my culture that, I don't understand fully, but I know that there's a purpose of where I am today. And I know that there's pressure that requires that purpose. And the pressure comes with endurance. And I'm proud to be first gen. I think it's something that a lot of people do experience. So to be a voice for that, to in my field, wherever I am, to be a voice for those who are tackling these things, and to let them know that there's hope and that there's something on the other side of this.
Thank you for that. The last question I had was, I want to reframe it just a little bit. I was going to ask you about on campus, like what resources have you found on campus? And I do want to talk about that, but I think I want to frame it as, we have here a large amount of students who are first gen. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer or a false fact that we don't have a large population, or that the arts or private college or anything is just, they're just not here. That's completely false. So I think my question is more, if you were in the room right now, you're speaking to new students who are first generation students, what would you tell them? Whether it's resources that you have found that have worked, or things to continue to advocate for, anything like that. I'm wondering what message you would have to the new students who are here, who are first generation.
I think first and foremost, you're not alone. I think the beautiful thing about being not exactly post-pandemic, but the wonderful thing about being on campus again is that you get to see and you get to meet so many new people. The one thing I would say to these first generation students is, reach out, talk to people, because if you isolate yourself, you're not going to have as a good of experience as somebody who doesn't, or somebody who already knows how to, navigate college. You're not alone. Columbia has a bunch of resources that can help you as a first generation student.
I think there's a big thing in, like, don't be scared to ask for help. You do have support. You have to ask for it, because the knowledge of this need is not a lot. Not a lot of people know about it. So you need to start reaching out, making connections, figuring out how, and I think as like first gen, we usually go the route of, like, we want everything to be perfect, and we want it to look right and everything. But this is just one of those things that you just start at. You can't be scared to start at the beginning. With your resources, with your allocation of talk to. Don't be scared to start at the beginning. You have to start somewhere, because it's going to pay off for generations to come.
Thank you for that. And this talk came up from the First Gen Fan Club, which is a group of staff here who, we hope, right, that students who are first gen can come to the staff or faculty and their students that they trust, and find ways, to obviously register for classes, financial aid, ways to get involved, everything like that. But we also want to make space for everything that you named. Is that you might be coming into college feeling very isolated and lonely, and the path to get to where you got now was quite the path. And I think, of course, we want to acknowledge that and want to make space to potentially heal from that. To say you might be exhausted. I think a lot of things where we are, have big points of pride are also can be points of exhaustion.
Definitely.
So I appreciate you both so much for being everything that you've done for your own paths, but for your peers here too. And thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having
Thank you for having us.